Chapter 29. History Down Below. Once more, Jim sat in the back of a truck with rifle in hand, waiting to see where it was going to take him. After being on the move for so long, he had lost count. It was becoming natural to jump in and take in the sights. Right now, he was enjoying what he saw as he tried not to be obvious while studying Dawn's features in her military uniform. The three of them, Kevin, Dawn, and Jim, had made it official while at camp, waiting for Sam to return with the news about today's mission. They were now sworn members of the Republic Army of America, RAA, and here he was. Just 3 months ago, he would have thought someone crazy or a conspiracy nut had he or she spoken of an underground highway. Jim thought about how all this new excitement and adventure in his life had come at a price. For many, like Larry, Mary, and his family, that price had been death. Seeing that Dawn was shuffling her way over next to him, Jim's heart began beating a little faster. His rule of not allowing any new relationships had vanished about as fast as it was conceived. While squeezing between him and the next guy, Dawn asked, "You scared, Callie?" Jim thought, "Hell yes I am," but he said, "Hell no. Let's light this firecracker." "Slow down there, Trigger, and rest your safety. You know we are hoping for the good guys to be in control, right?" Dawn asked, playing along with his fake bravado. Kevin, who was listening to the conversation from alongside Jim, jumped in. "I hear this Captain Sawyer led his men all over the state and took over the state capitol before being shot and killed." Remembering the last thing he saw on any television, the breaking news broadcast of Sawyer giving a speech, Jim felt the need to make a correction. "I saw him speaking before he was shot, but the power went out. Apparently it wasn't that bad if we're meeting him now." Jim tried replaying the broadcast in his mind, but could not remember enough details to glean any useful information. As Dawn and Kevin debated the topic, Jim lost himself in the magnificent underground world he was now in, and what it had to have taken to build. Guess this could be a big part of the reason the national debt was so high. Wonder how many more conspiracy theories are true. Aliens? It didn't take long for Jim's thoughts to make their way back around to Dawn, especially since her face was so close to his as she leaned in front of him to argue with Kevin. Staring at her cheek just inches away from his lips, the urge to strike out with a kiss became so great that he caught himself wetting his lips in preparation. Why not? Jim thought, closed his eyes, moistened his lips one last time, and then made his move. Nothing but air. Suddenly, the brakes of the truck engaged, and the momentum propelled her past his readied lips. Quickly, he leaned back in hopes of covering up his missed attempt, but that was not to be the case as Kevin elbowed him in the side, having seen what had just taken place. Dawn pulled herself back into the seat and looked around, none the wiser of what almost happened. "We shouldn't be there yet. What's going on?" Dawn asked, stretching her neck out while attempting to see over the top of the truck. "Damn, Jim, you looked like a prairie dog sniffing the wind." "Shut up, Kevin," Jim replied, as forceful as he could make a whisper. "Quiet and be ready," an officer shouted from the cab of the truck. Sam stared out from behind the lead Humvee's windshield as it brought the convoy to a stop on the underground highway. The sight was something he had not expected, and had he not had confidence that he was right about who it was, the situation would have frightened him as well. "Why have we stopped?" General Harwood's voice came over the radio beside him. Captivated by the force ahead of him, and just how any rifles were pointing his way, Sam could not imagine anyone living through the first few seconds once the triggers had been pressed. Again, Harwood's voice came from the speakers. "What's going on, Mr. Crawford?" Reaching over slowly, Sam picked up and keyed the mic. "General, we have contact, and I'm moving forward. Out." Sam signed off and concentrated on every movement he made as he exited the Humvee. Once his feet had touched the pavement, he raised his hands high above his head to show he held nothing that could be considered a weapon. Unable to shield his eyes from the blinding lights aimed his way, he stared down to the ground and walked forward until he received the command. "You can put your hands down," Karnik said, as the lights behind him were shut off to allow him to be seen. "Thanks," Sam said, thankful to be able to see the person he was to negotiate with. "State your business." Karnak wanted to keep things clear and had no room for idle conversation. It was time to be the aggressor. "I would like to speak with Captain Sawyer about joining forces." "Sawyer is dead," Karnak informed the man standing in front of him. Now Sam suddenly felt the fear creeping in as his confidence on who was actually standing before him left. "Sorry to hear that. May I inquire as to whom I am speaking?" "After you tell me what you want," Karnak quickly responded, figuring he had nothing to lose at this point since he couldn't just gather up his toys and go home. Sam said a little more aggressively, "I am Sam Crawford, formerly of the FBI and now part of the Republic Army of America. We are moving our forces west." Sam, is that you?" Robert asked as he walked around Karnak to greet Sam. "Robert Squires?" Sam shouted, reaching out to shake Robert's outstretched hand. "Wow, man, I didn't think we would meet again after the EMP. Hell, I didn't even recognize you," Robert said, excited about the reunion. "That's because you only saw me through a scope," Sam said jokingly as he rubbed his sore arm. Karnak looked back to Angelique, who had insisted on coming with her team. "Now don't you wish you would have stayed in bed and rested?" Then he turned back to the two catching up as hundreds of men pointed weapons at each other. "Where is that scary sister of yours and that damn ranger?" Sam asked, looking past Robert in hopes of seeing them. Not wanting to get into what had all taken place, Robert was happy when Karnak interrupted. Speaking a little more relaxed, Karnak asked once again, "So Sam, what is all this?" Happy to have been right about Robert and the military unit, Sam began. "This is the RAA and the Kansas National Guard mixed with some Missouri National Guard and soldiers from Fort Leavenworth heading east to remove the Chinese. Then we plan on getting this country back on its feet. You in?" Karnak stood and thought for a second about what was unfolding here hundreds of feet underground. His main thought was how better things were when all he had to do was execute orders handed down, as the decisions had already been made by higher-ups. Now being the commander of the UCM, he made the calls that others carried out, regardless if they were the right ones or not. "Sam, I like what you say your mission is, but who is in charge of your group of merry men?" "That would be me." Karnak turned his attention in the direction of the voice as a figure walked toward them, but the Humvee light preventing Karnak from getting a clear look at who had spoken. Figuring the proper thing to do at this point would be to introduce himself, Karnak started speaking before the figure had stepped full from the light. "I am Commander Carl E. Karnak of the United Constitutional Mili." Just then the face of the man appeared to him, and from the frightened look on the general's face, he had recognized Karnak as well. With 3 long, swift strides, Karnak closed the distance between them, and with each step, the rage at seeing Harwood's face built up inside. With all the power he could summon, Karnak struck out for Harwood's throat as he stood in fear. Just before Karnak's potentially lethal blow made contact, Angelique deflected it with lightning speed. "You're supposed to be dead!" the general cried out in fear, though only those nearby could hear what he had said over the sound of safety switches being flicked to fire. Having deflected the blow, Angelique stood between Karnak and the general, staring into Karnak's eyes. "Who said I needed rest?" she said, giving him a big smile. Taking in a few deep breaths, Karnak started thinking a little more clearly and could feel the tension in the air from hundreds of nervous fingers rested on triggers. Raising his hand, Karnak signaled for his men to lower their weapons, and slowly he heard them being switched back to safe. Continuing to look into Angelique's beautiful blue eyes, Karnak's mind began making connections. He turned back to Harwood. "You're the reason my company was arrested. You're also the reason Sawyer is dead. It was supposed to have been me. That is why nobody came to retake the tunnel. You wanted to make sure I was dead first. Then you thought your lackey had killed me at the camp. Well, once again, your guy missed." By the time Karnak had finished, he was breathing heavily and had to turn and walk away. Seeing that Karnak had finished and was now walking away, Angelique turned to Harwood and asked calmly, "Is that all true?" There are greater things at stake." Harwood didn't know how to answer. The shock of seeing Karnak had short-circuited his ability to think clearly. Having never met Harwood before, Angelique only knew what Karnak had said about him, and only stopped Karnak from killing the man because of the belief that something could be worked out between the two. With the avoidance of her question, she came to the same conclusion Karnak had, and Angelique balled her fist up and jabbed the general in the stomach, causing him to double over. As he bent over, Angelique helped him along by grasping both hands behind his head, pulling him down rapidly into her rising knee and shattering his nose on contact. Karnak spun back around at hearing the cracking of bone, just in time to see Harwood fall limp on the pavement. Turning back to Sam, who had little idea of what was happening, he said in a commanding tone, "Pick him up or run over his ass. I don't care. We need to join forces, but we don't need murderous bastards like him in charge. That's what got us here in the first place." Sam stood with his hand up in the air, signaling for those in the convoy to hold fire in case any of them felt the need to back the general. Little did he know the new information provided by Karnak about the general had spread like wildfire throughout. Finally getting a vantage point by standing on her seat, Dawn had been giving those in her truck a play-by-play. Those around her had a difficult time believing what she was saying, or were unwilling, and began jockeying for the best view while remaining as silent as possible. Each became a believer by the time they saw the woman who had protected the general drop him to the ground like a sack of manure. Jim began shaking his head side to side in disbelief. "Just great. Travel thousands of miles just to join up with the bad guys."